What will you do when your worst day became an open battleground? The plot of the movie tonight features a troubled man, an ex-Marine, who only wishes for another chance at life, but finds himself stuck in the midst of a war where the only way out is by confronting his own demons, surviving alone, and battling against all odds. Could he survive and save others from the same terrible fate that he once thought could not be overcome? Let's dive in through the whole story with us. Eddie Deacon, who used to be a captain in the 3rd Battalion Marines, enters the Veterans Employment Office carrying the burden of his past and the desperation of his present. There was no doubt about his intentions as he came to apply for the job. He was desperate. 2 days ago, Eddie had read an advertisement on the internet, which seemed like the opportunity he needed to start afresh. But the very second he asked for it, the administrator replied that the position was taken.
We just don't have anything that matches your skill set right now.
He did not let his disappointment show. She was going through his files when she found out that he was from the military, and the credentials were impressive enough to make her change her tone. But suddenly, she noticed that his psychological evaluation was incomplete. Eddie immediately brushes off the mistake as an administrative oversight, although he believes it may be more than that. However, Eddie chooses not to delve deeper into the matter. Sadly, Eddie continues to explain that there are no jobs available within the agency that fit his credentials. This is when Eddie's irritation comes out.
I can't wait for what I am entitled to.
Eddie mentions that his wife and daughter are far away, and he does not have the luxury to wait for the ideal job.
My kid and my wife are 2 states away.
Whatever comes, minimum wage. He needs it right away. Eddie quickly regains himself and exits the office. Just as he is about to exit, the administrator beckons him back and provides him with a job opportunity as a night security guard at the Ridgeside Mall. Meanwhile, away from Eddie's dilemma, an armored car filled with U.S. Marshals drives through a gloomy night carrying a very valuable witness, a little girl known as Jaime. The mission starts normally, but suddenly it becomes creepy when all forms of communication become dysfunctional. Cell phones lose signals, radio devices stop working, and even backup support cannot be reached. Suddenly, an eerie feeling sets in as the Marshals feel isolated from everything else on Earth except the vehicle and its passengers. Fear starts creeping in as the Marshals keep looking at each other with worried expressions on their faces, and then, unexpectedly, lights from behind start to follow them. Why would anyone follow them? They were told that the whole area was under lockdown from any kind of interference. The feeling starts setting in gradually, but surely that the Marshals have lost control. They knew very well that they had to protect her. Now, it seems like it might be too late for that. Panic occurs when flashlights shine brightly on the vehicles from either end. The first car crashes due to spike strips placed across the road, causing it to tumble over completely and obstructing the convoy's path. What ensues is an extremely well-planned ambush. Men armed with guns attack the convoy, shooting at it in the dark. The Marshals, despite their preparation, find themselves overpowered. They are taken down one by one. Finally, in a desperate attempt to save their lives, the leader of the group instructs Jaime to run into the forest. Scared out of her wits, she flees, hearing gunshots as her protector is murdered. Upon going back to the city, Eddie goes back to his tiny, dark little apartment where he feels like he does. A broken man, all alone in an environment which seems stifling to him. The rain pattering on the window panes seem like an external expression of his internal thoughts and emotions, which he is struggling to hold back. Eddie decides to pick up the phone and call his wife, who is worried about him and not about his job. She tells him to get some help, to speak to someone about what he is feeling, and not to hold back everything by himself. Eddie dismisses her concerns and tries to act brave about the whole situation, telling her that it's fine, and telling her about his new job, saying that he needs to leave again for a while.
Listen, I have found a job.
That's so good. Where?
Well, it's not close. I have to be here for a little bit.
Are you okay?
I'm okay, really.
Later that evening, Eddie arrives at the Ridgeside Mall, where the entire facility is empty and echoey under weak fluorescent lights. He's met by his boss, Vance, an excitable and laid-back individual who approaches the job with the same level of seriousness as one would approach going through the motions of daily life. Vance gives Eddie a brief introduction to the rest of the crew. Mason, an ambitious college student trying to earn enough money to pay off his school debt. Ruby, a reserved and exhausted-looking individual who has probably been at work for too long. And finally, Johnny, who is currently on patrol duty. Eddie notices some obvious weaknesses in the security system while receiving his orientation, but he doesn't make too much of a fuss. However, Eddie knows better than to take the situation lightly. As Eddie walks around the mall's quiet, dark hallways, the silence seems abnormal. Every step creates an echo. Every shadow seems to remain for a little too long. But everything looks normal until the sudden loud banging on the mall's entrance breaks the silence. Immediately becoming aware of what's happening, Eddie makes his way towards the noise. Through the mall's glass doors, he spots a frightened child beating against the doors, looking desperate and scared. Eddie opens the door and brings the child inside the mall. The child, Jaime, collapses into Eddie's arms, shaking and hardly able to talk. The crew hurriedly tries to respond by calling the police. However, their phones aren't getting any signal and are dead silent. Fear starts creeping into them. Soon enough, a lone man named Charlie walks towards them in a very calm manner and says that he is her father.
I'm looking for my daughter, a little girl. She's 11.
Yeah, we got her. Yeah, she's here. She's okay. Don't worry.
Oh, thank God.
The way he looks isn't consistent with the panic-stricken Jaime. Eddie's intuition senses danger. The man identifies himself as Charlie, his tone composed and controlled. Yet Eddie remains skeptical. His years of experience have trained him to value intuition more than spoken words. He proceeds to ask detailed questions regarding Jaime, something that can only be known by the true parent.
When's her birthday?
16th April 2004.
Color of her eyes?
Dude, give it a
Brown.
rest.
Does she have braces? Sir?
No, she doesn't.
No.
What's wrong with you, man?
Your dad.
Charlie provides all the necessary information without missing a beat, and suddenly there is no room left for doubts. The guards become lax, glancing at each other as if everything has settled down. Vance makes a move towards opening the door. But suddenly, Jaime awakens, and at first sight of Charlie, she cringes in sheer terror, clinging to Eddie's arm.
Kids.
Go get her! Get her!
Nothing else needs to be said. Eddie acts immediately, intervening before Vance reaches the door. After realizing that the game is over, Charlie's face becomes firm. Charlie removes his mask and throws a sinister offer at them. It is $1.25 million for the girl. There is complete silence in the room. Vance is tempted, but Eddie isn't. He instantly knocks out Vance to take charge. Charlie's voice turns threatening. If they don't comply, then they will be killed by them. Eddie closes the door and realizes that their war begins here. Now that it has become evident that the situation is critical, Eddie wastes no time and takes control of the situation. He calmly gives orders while making preparations. It becomes clear to him that Jaime cannot be scared anymore. She knows that her father, an accountant working with Charlie, had betrayed his boss and paid with his life for it. She had witnessed all these events and therefore was the only one who could put them in danger. The team immediately starts barricading the entrances using whatever items they could find around, blocking the corridors and preparing other kinds of ambushes. Eddie is confident in his ability to help them cope with the situation. Finally, the moment comes. Suddenly, vehicles ramming into the building cause windows to break apart. Armed people storm the building, not giving any time to the others to react. It turns out to be the beginning of the siege. Eddie directs his defensive maneuvers with surgical precision and efficiency, his military background showing through as he analyzes the tactics of his opponents and devises ways to overcome them methodically. Eddie places his guards in optimal spots, utilizing the building's design to turn it to their advantage, while Mason, despite being relatively green, proves resilient and adaptable enough to make do with anything at hand to defend himself. There are moments when fear grips them all, but survival motivates them through it all. On the other hand, there is no second thought on the part of the attackers. They attack ruthlessly, wave after wave, motivated not only by financial gain, but by something else as well. The stakes have been laid out clearly by Charlie that success equals a windfall and failure leads to death. As things escalate, the mall starts to appear as much more of a prison than a sanctuary. Members of the team start to crack due to the pressure that Johnny gets killed when he tries to go into position to call for help, making this their only way of communicating with anyone on the outside. Ruby sustains serious injuries that prevent her from staying alert, while Mason is overcome with fear at this point. Even as members of his team die, Eddie makes sure that everything does not descend into utter chaos. He moves around the entire time, making sure that nothing goes undone and that no ground is lost in the struggle. Jaime, who appears to be only a spectator at first, reveals herself to be surprisingly resourceful in helping Eddie coordinate the defense efforts. Hope is soon seen again through flashing red and blue lights, but the police vehicles pull up in front, and Eddie's instincts tell him otherwise. It turns out to be nothing more than a ploy by the gangsters' men in disguise as police officers. Now it becomes clear that all hope was merely an illusion. With all the chaos going on, Mason gets killed while Vance is seriously injured. This leaves Eddie and Jaime as the only surviving fighters on their side. Eddie, without any other option left, creates one last tactic, which involves taking out the communication system of the intruders and then calling for real help. Eddie battles his way through the enemies, killing many while he himself is injured. On the other hand, Charlie pursues Jaime and tries to force her into submission by making her believe that no one will come to her rescue. But Jaime does not fall for Charlie's trap since she already knows from Eddie's actions that this is not true. Finally, the showdown between Eddie and Charlie happens, where both battle fiercely until Jaime uses her wit and team effort to incapacitate Charlie using a taser. As the smoke clears, real authorities come to the rescue. Jaime refuses to go away from Eddie because she realizes he is the man who stood by her promises to keep her safe. Despite the odds against him, Vance lives and shares a moment of honor with Eddie. Days later, Eddie regains consciousness in a hospital bed, but Jaime comes to see him, saying goodbye to him. The girl feels lonely, however, she gets some support from her uncle. It gives her the feeling of security and acceptance. Watching that scene, Eddie feels a great deal of joy. In the end, Eddie comes back to his family and learns that nothing can replace his wife and daughter. This is the story of Safe, 2012, that is basically a story of survival, salvation, and a promise of protection that never fades. This story also tells us how a simple day may transform into a battlefield, with trust broken and danger closing on all sides. Ultimately, it's a story that features a damaged individual who, with courage, intuition, and even sacrifice, finds meaning in the last place one might expect. Amidst violence and tragedy, this person evolves into someone more powerful than they once were, as an individual, ready to be a shield against the darkness for those unable to defend themselves. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoyed this story recap, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more stories just like this.